What do we think of Mavfield? Mavfield.
¿Qué es lo que pienso de Mavfield?
What's crack? It's your boy D-Murph, and you're watching the Mavfield podcast. Big shout out to Reraf for sponsoring the podcast this season, keeping us down. This week we've got one of my favourite artists, new album out, Maverick Sabre. What's the crack?
Very fragile, hungover.
Yeah.
I had a Dublin Tuesday night last night. Came out and did a Brick Nasty pop-up in Wigwam, and we're supposed to stay for one drink and ended up staying for way too many.
Yeah. So. What was the actual performance like?
Oh, it was nice. Yeah, it was nice. I played back in, I think it was January, in the Sugar Club. I came out, they did 2 nights. And so we already had kind of some songs in the bank anyway. And then we kind of did 1 or 2 just straight off the cuff last night. So it was good.
Sick.
Yeah, it was the first time they were running all their new stuff for the first time live. So It was good, man. It was good for us. And I think like the audience got a cool show.
Because I was sick when they did the Brick Nasty sessions, but my wee brother went down from Belfast on his own to go to it. And says it's just class, like having that sort of backing band going and like having all the different artists coming through. Like such a special thing to do, I think.
Yeah, it was magical. We are, I kept kind of going back to thoughts of when I was a kid and starting in music, and the scene was small and very tight and pure, but seeing, the age of the acts, the kind of like the broadness in sounds, like there's punk, there's R&B, there's hip hop, there's, everyone from Abbey to Courtesy to Brick Nasty, and I'm like, if I was a kid starting music again, these would all be a shining light to know that this was going on, So, and to see like the audience full of people who want to come and listen to it.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it felt like a lot of our audiences, especially on Irish hip hop, were like other MCs maybe. So it was nice to see people like young kids that are coming and listening to it and like embracing it.
I think it's cool because like, especially I think for people like you, kind of like you mentioned there, if you're into like punk, you can almost get dragged into the hip hop stuff because there's people say like Khaki Kid who've kind of got a mix of that, and like you've got like Abby maybe doing some R&B stuff but rapping a little bit as well, and it's just kind of like this inseparable soup of all these different things, but they're all kind of connected.
Yeah, and like the Irishness that runs through it and the feeling of it and like the storytelling, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is such a beautiful melting pot of what Ireland is, and it's exciting.
Fatboy had said about why the shows came about as part of like a bio I was doing for him and stuff, and like it's even amazing as a community seeing people that come through and play and support him and his family and stuff as well. Yeah.
Well, I think like, that's what it should be. That's what music and connections through music should be, as much as like music is an industry in itself and like, there's some negative sides of the industry. When we connect with each other, we should be able to support each other because, I think like that should be the core of it. And like when people come to the shows, they're fans or listeners or whatever term you want to use, but they're also part of a community because we're healing when we have an audience that like, gives us energy. And I feel like for any music listeners to go into shows, you heal as well in some form or fashion. Whether you're going to rock out, dance, listen to spoken word, whatever it is, wherever your medium is, it's to be able to do that amongst artists as well, I think is important because life's not always easy. So
What was the last concert you've been to that's kind of made you feel like that as a participant rather than a performer?
Do you know what? Very recently was the Ezra Collective show in the Olympia.
Oh,
No,
so
I
you
came out for a song, but I was able. It was really early on, so I was like, which I was glad. I was like, I'm gonna be able to come out and enjoy it. And like, I haven't seen them live since I think they did Coco in 2019.
Wow, that's a long time.
Something like that. Yeah, either just before lockdown or maybe it was just before. And their show, and I always loved them anyway, but their shows are just amped up to the maximum. So
I felt so emotional the last time I seen them at All Points East, but before that I seen them at All Together Now, and the way the Femi sort of interacts with the crowd and stuff, like I actually felt like proper emotional the way he was talking about it and kind of just talking about joy and how powerful it is and how it is something within your control. And I know you spoke on it a bit before. It's kind of like that idea where you can feel helpless sometimes, but I think their music actually sort of gives you some sort of agency and take back a bit of control.
Yeah, I think there's something really powerful in that. Like looking at the audience, and I kind of spent a lot of the time looking at the audience, seeing people of all ages, all backgrounds, dancing like they're kids.
Yeah.
Like free. I don't care who's watching. Like ironically, that's the song. You know what I mean? But it did feel like that, and I think like that's a really rare thing to be able to pull out of people, like actual joy. And I think you have also kind of like a spiritual thing in there that feels like a bit of a cleansing of the soul. You don't really get that often with acts. Like, demo at Vicar Street in Christmas is like a charge.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had the chance to see Chronics.
No, I've never got to see it.
Chronics, like when you asked me the question, it wasn't recent. It was 2015, 2016. Played a show in Brixton Academy. That was in line with all that. I feel like that's maybe the most special show I've ever been to and felt an energy and a presence from. I was like, oh, this is some powerful stuff. And I feel like, when you feel that and experience that from live shows, you realize the power of them.
Yeah. Wait, what was it about that show? Just
For the Chronic show.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his music anyway, and we've been friends for years. We've made music together, but there was just something about the energy in the room that felt like, felt ancient in a way. I don't know what other way to describe it. There's like, I've always grown up, I call it like warrior music, like whether it's a demo tune, whether it's a 2-pack tune, whether it's Marilyn Manson tune, or whatever. There's different feelings and emotions I get from different acts. And there's a spirit in something, and I feel like that's what carries through.
Cause I guess like with the pop-up shows recently, there's kind of that, like, in my head, my first reaction is, and this is something that's maybe bred into us by the industry. It's like, why are they free? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you're like, wait, what? Like, it's music. Like, that's a good thing. What is it about these free pop-up shows do you think is important or strikes a chord with people? Because when I'm researching before this interview, all the things that pop up on TikTok is like, nowhere else would you get to see someone like this playing for free. And it's from years ago. It's not even just from this year. You've been doing this a while. Like,
I think that sometimes there can be a disconnect, and there can be almost just like a service sometimes when you get into the industry side of things, where it's like your interactions with people who are listening to the music are like when they come to shows, and it's like
transaction or something.
Transactional, and not always very connected. And especially if venues get bigger, even just physically, your distance from the audience is further, and it feels can feel a bit disconnected.
Okay.
And for me, I grew up in a lot of pubs. My dad was a musician. There was always music in the house, and I was always going to see him play, whether it was in a small pub or a little venue or someone's house. And so there's always been a connection with them close, immediate, intimate settings. And I think like charging for something like that feels a bit against the purpose of what something like that is in a room. You know what I mean? It's like, I've seen some of the best performances in pubs of singers who've got one song in them. And it's like, wow, I just felt something deep from you, and I'm glad that it was in this setting and it wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't contrived or anything.
But do you think that the audience is more connected when you're doing that stuff as well? Have you found that?
Yeah, obviously, I think when we're not amped either. So like, last night was amped, but like when we do the pub stuff, it's not purposely no amplification. So it's like being able to read the room and feel the room, and then hopefully they feel that back from you. Yeah.
Because I guess like something, when I think about you and your music, something that immediately comes to me is like the spirit of what it is. And when I think back about maybe the experiences you've gone through where you've re-released your album because you've had trouble with labels getting royalties, all that kind of stuff, and you're doing these free pop-up stuff still, I think it'd be easy to become cynical and go the other way. But it almost seems to have fueled you a little bit, and like you've mentored other artists and stuff like that. Would that be an accurate read, or how does that sit?
Yeah, I think you can be like, the music industry, if you allow it to be, can turn you pretty cynical. Especially because, creatives are coming into an industry where most of us really at our core are kids throwing paint at the wall and drawing outside the lines and like fascinated by, the everyday thing that we turn into whatever we create.
Yeah.
And so when that then gets turned into like deals that are not in favor of the artist, and you have times of your journey that are roller coasters, and people, both business wise and journey wise, like you meet disrespect, or you meet times where you're shelved, or like you hear weird attitudes about artists and put people into boxes. Like a lot of that over a period of time can make people either never want to do music again, or become very cynical and just go, fuck it, I just want to make as much money out of this as possible, or have a bad attitude towards it. But I think there's too much like you said, the spirit. There's too much spirit in what I feel from music and what it's done to me and for me, to not turn it into something that feels like I'm giving back or passing the baton on or doing something positive with it. You know what I mean?
Because with the new album as well, I think it kind of like my read on it is it kind of embodies a bit of that as well, where it's like you could just burn everything down, you could just be like fuck this, but it is kind of like more of a okay, like there are some good things that are worth holding on to. Let's get rid of the other shit. Kind of in terms of album title, if we were to selectively burn stuff, what are some of the things in the world right now you'd hold tight and want to hold on to?
I think centering back to the community spirit. I think there is a core value in most people that's there when we allow it to exist or we nurture it, and there's like a warmth in people and a community spirit that, as much as the world is like got horrendous inequalities and disconnections, there's still a core human value of community. And I think like even doing pop-ups, for me, going back and being in pubs and being around people and being very close to people, you know that we've got this common thread to us. And I feel like that's dismissed a lot. And there's like, as much as, you know, we want to keep people even more connected, I think sometimes what we do have needs to be nurtured more.
Yeah.
Because I think what it does is it conditions us into more hopelessness. Because as soon as we've got hopelessness, we don't want to like we don't want to nurture the things that are there, that are ready to kind of just be watered and grow a bit more. It's like, you know, hopelessness, I feel like, is probably one of the most destructive things in society at the moment. It's used to manipulate, used to divide, and it kind of turns a blind eye to the beautiful things. So I think they're like a sense of community and warmth amongst people. Yeah.
Because I actually watched a film recently called Dancing on Narrow Ground, and it's about dance music in the 80s in the north of Ireland, and how they have these kids, and it's like, yeah, I'm Catholic, he's Protestant, we go up at the weekend and we're dancing together and it doesn't matter. Then it films them outside of that space, and they're calling people Fenians, they're calling them Tigs, they're calling them Huns. They hate each other outside it, but when they're brought together with music, it actually just changes their whole perspective. And I think you're so right, and I think there's a lot of intentionality from higher powers to divide and conquer in that kind of way and remove some sort of agency and hopeful feeling. Who are some artists out there right now that you think are really, Ezra Collective are one for me as well, but who are sort of bridging that gap and making you feel hopeful with their art?
Yeah, I was about to reel off everyone that I mentioned before, but like, you know, for me, I think the Chronixes of the world, Cleo Soul's doing it, Sault are doing it. Who else would be up there?
I think the Sault one's super interesting. There's secret shows and stuff, and
that's a part of this conversation as well, right?
Yeah,
it's like nurturing that thing of like making things feel off the cuff, and that we're all getting unique experiences. I think you can get like sucked into this world where everyone goes to a show, everyone films it, you watch it back on YouTube, you show it to your friends, or you just have it on your phone, you never look at it again, and it's like this kind of, it's almost like this simulation of performances that everyone kind of sees, and they become very generic. They're all clipped the same way, and it's like having stuff that's off the cuff and making people feel like, oh, what, Sault are doing a show in Drum Sheds tonight, and it's an immersive show. What do you mean? And then you walk in. I went to that show.
Oh, man, so jealous, man.
Yeah, I went to it.
What was it like?
Man, it was inspiring. To be honest, like I was having conversations at the time about doing an immersive show around my 10-year album. We were gonna do a theatre production of it and have it based in 4 rooms, and COVID hit and all of that, and it kind of got parked a bit. So when I went to see that, I was like, oh wow, all right, yeah, this is re-sparked a kind of like a fire in me for it, because it was magical as a show. Like you walk in, as soon as you walk in the door, and Drum Sheds is like a 10,000 cap venue anyway, right? But I think they only sold 1,000 tickets or whatever, something like that. And you walk in, like you walk through, from the minute you walk in the door, like you walk through this old like Korean 1980s apartment with actors in it, smoking, watching TV. You just walk in through their living room, and then you kind of walk into this amazing like glass windowed room with all their albums kind of like growing out of the wall. And then you walk into the main arena, and it's almost set up like something like a Crystal Maze or something. You've got one band here, you've got an orchestra on the left, you've got singers popping up on the balconies. Yeah. It was honestly, it was amazing. Like I was in awe of the show, and I was like, wow, this is a good standard to set for immersiveness.
Yeah, I mean, everything about Sault is kind of blowing my mind at the moment. Even just when I first heard them a couple of years ago, and the fact that it was anonymous, and then seeing that, it does sort of set the bar, doesn't it? And kind of inspires just to know that there's other ways to go about stuff. There's a band in Belfast that won an award last night called Hortan that I seen a couple of weeks ago, and they're kind of doing theatrical performances all in Irish, and it's like folk, trad, electronic, but they're all wearing like pagan masks and stuff whilst they're performing. Insane. Like it kind of has that feel to it as well, where it's quite theatrical.
Yeah, and I think like that's again, it's giving people something more in an age where we can easily just turn up, get paid, do the bare minimum, give you the bangers, and then fuck off. Whereas it's like, nah, I want to come away from shows thinking, oh well, that feels like I've experienced something different. And it's even like with the Sault thing about the 5 albums, when you talk about like, oh wait, 5 albums for free, like it sounds fucking mental.
Yeah,
but that also generates a kind of an intimacy with an act before you even see them. You're like, oh wow, that's beautiful. I get to take these 5 albums, and yeah, you know, you can make money in music. There's money to be made, but not everyone needs to be stripped all the time.
Because there's something where like the word like super fans and community have become like buzzwords for like industry people I've found recently, where it's like we're building this online community, we're building super fans
from the people who do not have a fucking clue about what they're trying to build as a community. But
exactly, because it's kind of like what you're talking about genuine like connection with an artist, where it's like, whoa, they give us all this art for free, and now they're putting on this amazing show. I'm going to pay my hard-earned money to go see them because I have a connection to their art.
1,000,000%.
It's not like just peppering people with this idea that you're like giving them a follower name and stuff. I've seen that a lot, where that's fine, whatever, but I feel like there's all these very transactional ways of building communities online, and it has become a bit of a buzzword to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just been another thing of like people who don't have any creative ideas see things happening naturally, and they're like, yeah, let's do, you know, what's the buzzword surrounded by this, and how can we manufacture our artists to do stuff like that. I think people are not stupid. I think you can feel, not always, but I think you can feel when stuff's manufactured in that sense, you know. And I think the industry will always jump on whatever has natural momentum to kind of like harness it for their own things, you know. But I think that means then just more to the job of the artist to cultivate that in the most genuine way you can, in your own way, you know, whether that's making more theatrical shows or doing pop-ups in, you know, your local sports center, or like one-on-one fan meetings and like telling them about a song, or I don't know, something, just interactions in your own way that are genuine. I think people take away and are with you for life.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you have any like sort of formative experiences with artists you met younger in your career that kind of were like those kind of experiences where you met someone or you had an interaction or they spoke to you about an album and you took that on with you?
Yeah, there's been a couple of things. The other day, it wasn't a conversation necessarily we had, but it was an intimate performance. The other day, I was talking to someone about Lankham, and I remember being in a pub in Bleecker Street. This is years ago now, maybe 2016, 2017. And I think Damien Dempsey was in there and singing. We might have all been singing a couple of songs, and I heard kind of like echoing through the silence, I heard this like ancient voice from the corner of the room, and there's loads of people standing around her, and I'd never met her or heard her before. And Rady Pete was sat in the corner singing this song, and I was like, wow, this is a magical experience that I'm feeling here. It was like I was being like, through her tone, I was being like told the history of Ireland or something. I was like, wow, this is magical. And I remember taking away, and that was kind of that evening was kind of one of the inspirations for doing, like, getting connected back to pubs and pop-ups. And yeah, I think, you know what, the experiences for me for artists was kindness and appreciation. And I think it was like the artists that I met that felt kind and shared wisdom. It was as much as their words of you know, industry wisdom and wisdom of like artistry, it was also like the humbleness of people I always took a lot from and learned a lot, because not everyone has that. And sometimes that saddens me when I meet artists and it feels like, oh, you've used this art form as a vehicle to get off on your own ego. Yeah. Whereas like I've met loads of people of all different stages of their career who are like deeply humble. I remember meeting Snoop on a tour. What are you about to pull up?
I've got the photo.
What, of me answering? Oh, where you pull that up quick? Wow. That was when I was eating Nando's every single day. Yeah, right. And it's like, he came in first day. We did 4 shows with him in the UK, and it was maybe 2012, 2013. He came in first day, sat down with my whole band, asked what everyone played, what everyone's name was, had a conversation with us, how we feeling, like what are you up to, da-da. And every night of the tour, he invited us back into his dressing room.
Wow.
Just like, yo, and checked in on us. And his team checked in on us. I was like, oh, this is Snoop Dogg. I've met people who haven't done nothing.
Yeah.
And they're as rude as anything to you. So it's like, that experiences like that, really, I'm amazed how quick you had that photo on your fucking phone.
I come prepared with stuff,
good.
and I was going to bring it up in a different way.
Yeah,
But
okay. But yeah, that they're, to me, the magical ones. I'm like, oh, this is a man that feels like you know what you're in this for, and you know what you're carrying it for. And that's spiritual to me. Yeah.
I think it is very easy. I think it's also hard for artists now as well, and it's easy to sort of get lost in what's going on. But it is really inspiring to see that there are people like Snoop Dogg has got money coming out his ass. He doesn't need to speak to anyone. No, he doesn't want to. Do you know what I mean?
No. And there, look, on the other side, it is easy for us to get lost sometimes. So we definitely need to give people a grace of like, not everyone's gonna stay a prick. You know what I mean? So it's, you can get drunk on the ego side of what gets offered to you through music and through any kind of like art form that generates some kind of like audience. You know what I mean? So
because I've got a tweet that from a few years ago that kind of relates vaguely that. Do you want to just read it out and then maybe talk on it a little bit?
Yeah. I think it should be compulsory for politicians to have a shroom session in nature with no technology apart from a CD player with Enya songs on repeat for a couple of days before they take their position. I completely forgot about that, but I remember it now. Yeah, that's straight down the line. They should have that. You know, I still stand by that. I feel like, you know, whether people go on a journey through shrooms or some other psychedelic, or they can meditate and find a way, like whatever medium you can. I think I stand on that completely. I think the world would be a better place if the people who ran it had a more human perspective, because it feels at times that they're lacking that. So if they do, they've hidden it very well. But I definitely stand on that.
Yeah, I was actually reading about Enya recently. I was just doing a weird rabbit hole around samples and stuff, and I ended up going onto her stuff. But there's actually a research paper that claims that her music has healing powers, which I'm not surprised by at all. But yeah, shrooms and an Enya session sounds about right.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, you know. And then, you know, if that is the case to be true, then the argument for when people say like negative forces put into music and certain types of music or certain feelings in music being promoted, you know, can make people feel more hopeless or make people feel darker. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's a powerful art form that can be used really beautifully, but can also be used quite destructively.
Because I think there's like there's two sides of the coin of like social media with it as well, where I see, say just as an example, someone like KSI releases a song and has like a marketing campaign where he's intentionally getting people to like make fun of him and make fun of the music, and then kind of celebrating when he gets a top 10 with it and stuff. And it like just kind of had my head cooked that we're at a point where that's like an intentional thing to like, I know it'll work, it'll get in the top 10 or whatever, but to release a song that's kind of bad and have like hate stirred up so that it gets played. And social media just in general is quite difficult, because I've seen it change people's lives, and I understand why people might follow that route to get to where they want to be, to change their life or whatever. But it's just dark sometimes when it comes to music. Like
it is, yeah. And it's kind of like, I think like even leaning into that conversation about like getting online hate to promote it, like, all right, look, there's an intelligence in that, like, wow, all right, you're using this hate that you probably get a lot for his music, and you're turning it into something constructive for you. All right, in a thing by itself, fair enough. But I think there is that culture online, especially with music and just art. Obviously, in general, there's horrendous stuff being said, you know, negative comments and harassment and abuse all the time. But with that leaning into music, I feel like you almost see more negative comments than you do see like, oh, I just found this band, or oh, I just heard this song. And it's like, yeah, the culture of that online is very destructive, because it's like, yeah, it's loud.
Yeah, and people hold music pretty dearly to them, and it's the kind of thing where when you see someone kind of mocking it as well, sometimes I think that's another level of like people are rightfully annoyed in that kind of way.
Yeah, and it's like you can review music without mocking it, and without like tearing it apart. But I guess that's the thing we're in as well. It's like that's the social media, like you know, let me do something loud and you know, inflamed and people will kind of make comments about or kind of be pulled towards it. You know what I mean?
How, like, you've been independent for a while now. How are you able to kind of resist temptations to go off track of what you're doing and stay true to what? Because even financial pressures, you know, that's loud. That is something that's very real. That I imagine is something that you have to consider. How do you stay true to your art and what you're trying to do?
I think for me, obviously, yeah, you've got like the reality of life conversations, which is you've got bills to pay, and you also want to generate enough money to be able to keep making projects and having the freedom to do what you want and expand on that. For me, it's been a thing of like, I think writing's always helped, so I write for a lot of other people. I think it was 2016 when I came off Universal, and I didn't really have that much education about the background, the business element of music. I was kind of anti it. I remember watching back, which says a lot, but I remember watching back an interview with me when I first signed to Universal, and the guy behind the camera says, "Oh, like, do you ever think about recouping, and do you think about like percentages and stuff like that?" And I say in the interview, I must be 20. I say, "Oh yeah, no, I leave the numbers to everyone else." I was in Universal at the time, like in the building. I was like, "Oh, I leave the numbers to everyone else, and I just make the art." And like, yeah, all right, there's a purity in that, but it also left me at 26 with financially completely unstable, no ownership really of my first two albums, and no understanding of how I was going to get myself back on my feet. So it just took a lot of time to re-educate, surround myself with the right people, and build that financial stability. And that luckily enough comes through releasing and owning your own music. There's a lot more financial reward in that, but it takes a minute to build that stuff back up. And that was kind of one of the things of why writing, as much as I love it, and I'm it's constantly being able to exercise my art form, financially it's also good as well. So it's like you kind of learn different ways of navigating the industry. And like we were saying before, there's ways of being able to make money that you don't have to rip people off, and you can exist. And then you just gotta like, the keeping straight with your artistry is a different conversation, because I think you can get tempted in loads of different ways. Whether you're financially stable or not, that can creep in different ways. Doubt, or people saying you should release more music like this. That's an internal conversation. I think you have to constantly nurture the fan of your own music in you. Like, you have to make sure that when you close them doors, are you listening to your own music?
Yeah.
That's for me. It's like, if I can't listen to my own music, then who am I making it for, and who am I being guided by? It's like my own intuition needs to be nurtured, because I know what music I listen to from other people. No one can tell me what I'm going to listen to on a walk down the road or when I go home at night. So I should have that much security in my own music, and allow myself to explore that. And that's my main thing, of like making sure that the kid in me, the artist in me, is always nurtured,
Yeah. That's something difficult to maintain, I think, like in any art form, because there is so much outside noise. The album itself is doing really well, man. Like, it's amazing. Like, how have you been feeling in general about it?
Been really good. Yeah, it's been really good. It's the first album independently that's been charting as well as it has.
Number one in the R&B and hip hop charts.
Yeah. It's been an interesting process, because really from the start of this album, the whole process was different than I've ever done an album before.
Okay.
And even coming and straight doing shows and doing pop-ups, I haven't really done that around an album campaign. There's normally big blocks, and an album is normally taken, like, the rest of the records all took about 2 or 3 years. Whereas this was done in 6 months, and it was kind of concentrated. Like, from the start process, it was different. I went to one specific location, a barn in the countryside, and made the record there. And the week of the album release, we were out doing shows around it, and it's just felt different. The process has felt different. It's felt more connected in a way, and I think that's why it's maybe having a different type of pull towards people.
Yeah. What's your favorite song on the album?
It changes a bit, but at the moment it's Holy Land.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, Holy Land is probably my favorite. Holy Land or Facing the Crowd.
Yeah,
but yeah, lay Down on Me is a special one, because it's like, I think that's becoming a favorite of people's.
Yeah.
And that was, that's probably the instant one. But for me, the one I go back to is Holy Land's probably my number one.
Because the thing for me, which you were talking about, staying true to your art and not, deviating for other reasons or whatever. But what's amazing is you're able to go into these other sounds and it still feels you. Like you've got music that's dance music, you've got like hip hop stuff, you've got soul stuff, and the Holy Land's kind of had like a Jimi Hendrix vibe on the guitar. It's just like the tree of just influences are so wide on what you're doing, but it still feels pretty cohesive. Like,
yeah, I always wanted to maintain of like, my voice needs to be the genre, and then I make whatever I make around it. And I think for me, I've always felt like, a bit itchy with the idea of being labeled as a certain genre.
Yeah.
People are still calling me rapper in interviews, like rapper Maverick Sabre. I'm like, when was the last time you heard me rapping? I've been rapping on certain songs, but like this whole album singing. So I'm like, but I think people are gonna do that anyway. For me, again, like it was getting more influences out on this record. That was the kind of starting process before I started diving into making songs for this. Was I went back and started listening to loads of stuff I was listening to like in my early teens, and got back into like certain psychedelic bands that I was listening to, and that kind of just like that bled into the album process.
Okay. Sick. And what's the plans? You've got another pop up tonight.
Got another pop up in Emporium. Yeah, I don't even know what time it is, but I think it's 7:30.
Okay.
Yeah, 7:30. So and then maybe another one tomorrow before we go back.
When you were saying about community earlier as well, someone that seems to be doing it right is DJ AG on TikTok. So cool, man.
Yeah, I think that like, again, it's like, it's using, like we were saying earlier on, there's a beautiful side to social media and a really negative side. And it's like some of these things you think, oh, like, is pirate radio ever gonna come back? Are these community things ever gonna happen? I'm like, that's how you use it and make it feel old school and new school at the same time. It's like, that is a community. He's got, singers, songwriters, rappers. He's got kids on there that he's interviewing. He's like, it is really community based, and it's fun, and it's bringing back this kind of like, even though it's clipped in short form, it's bringing back this kind of long form thing of like what radio should be. And like, you're getting again unique experiences, and you've got artists of all ranges pulling up. I saw the Skepta JME thing. And it's like, that's beautiful. That connection's happening there, and it's like, I'm sure everyone's doing it for free.
I've seen bits of him saying where any money he does get, he's giving to people. Like,
but even that, all right, I didn't even know that. That's beautiful in its own way. It's like, there's something special about that. Whatever he's doing and kind of harnessing there, I think we can all take lessons from it. Yeah, absolutely. And like, how do we implement that in our own thing?
Because it kind of feels like, just on a wider note, that grime is kind of having a bit of a revival again. Like, because even, last year or sort of the year before, I've seen a lot of people doing the sort of jazz flips and stuff. A guy called Oakland and a few other people. So hard. Hard. So good. And what do you call guy on YouTube, Wiz something? It'll come back to me. But it does kind of feel like Grime's having another little thing.
Yeah, I think naturally, like, I remember the conversation around dubstep years ago. Yeah. I don't know what age you are, what era you grew up in, but I remember like when dubstep moved to the States, it became bro step. Everyone was like, dubstep's never coming back. No one wants to hear that ever again. And I'm like, how are we that short-sighted? Of course it's going to come back. Of course some kids who grew up, their parents grew up on it, or their sister grew up on it, are going to start producing some stuff. They're going to go back to the old sounds, and then suddenly you have like the blow-up of certain tunes like the Chase and Status are back and higher than ever, and it's like Scream and Benga are coming back, DJ, and I'm like, people want to hear this stuff. It just needs to... It's going to take a bit of time, and it's going to just redevelop. It's like garage. Like, garage keeps having these moments where like a generation will pass, and then suddenly you'll have the Georgia on My Mind tune or AJ Tracy, Ladbroke Grove, and I'm like, these are garage tunes, but they might be new versions of them.
It's like it's introducing a new audience to this stuff, because when I even discovered like grime when I was younger, like it was blowing my mind. And even hip hop, new iterations of that, and it brings you back to that's why I love hip hop, because there's this history of, paying homage to people, and then through the samples, through the references, then you find other stuff, man.
Yeah, like hip-hop for me was... Producing hip-hop for me as a kid, that's how I got into jazz. Yeah. Like, I'd sit and listen to jazz for hours and not call myself a jazz fan, but I was deeply into these records, not realizing that I am a jazz fan. And then I was like, spending hours cutting things up and like looking at the transitions and progressions, and you end up getting... that is the beauty of hip-hop, and I think like... Yeah, that's why as a genre, as an art form, like hip hop is probably one of the most special because of the combination of like it being fresh, but also being an education in, you know, blues or rock or wherever the samples are coming from. And yeah, so grime, I can feel that. I can feel the energy coming back. Yeah, I feel like there's, you know, you've got like Nia Archives with the new generation of like Jungleists and Pink Pantheress in our own way, bringing back that kind of lo-fi garage flip. And yeah, it's good. It's nice to see. I think like reintroducing, you know, an older sound to a new young audience with a fresh set of ears and fresh take on it. Man, it's been happening since the dawn of time. So yeah.
When you were talking about samples there as well, it kind of triggered something when I was looking at the Enya stuff the other day.
Yeah.
It's because the litigation around samples came. Did you know how this happened? It was Biz Markie got sued by an Irish artist called Gilbert O'Sullivan. Biz Markie like sampled an Irish artist called Gilbert O'Sullivan.
I know, yeah, Gilbert O'Sullivan, yeah.
It was that song Alone Again, Naturally. So he sampled it. In the past, it got settled out of court. So like you had like the De La Soul stuff when they got sued by the Turtles. Yeah. But with Gilbert Sullivan, it went to criminal court. So then he got sued basically. But after that, Biz Markie released an album called All Samples Cleared. So I heard this from Blind Boy a while ago and I started researching.
That's mad interesting.
Mad, isn't it? So it's like a fella from Ireland, basically.
Gilbert O'Sullivan, yeah, that's mad interesting. Wow. And so wait, you're saying that was the first?
The first one in criminal court, and that's like set the precedent for basically people to sample snitch and get people caught out. Wow. Crazy.
Yeah, because even like, I think like maybe it was more of an American culture thing, like in the music that, you know, it was a lot of samples, a lot of cases when I look back over the years of like, people not even trying to clear it and releasing it. Like obviously the famous one is the I'll be missing you.
Yeah. And the Sting and
they just put the record out. And I was like, that's mental. Sting is 1,000,000% gonna absolutely rip the ass.
2,000 a day or something.
Something crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting. The whole kind of history around samples, and I don't know if you know that one about what's the song? Cisco. Song.
Yeah.
Ricky Martin. So he the original beat was I can't remember the producer's name, but he'd made a beat tape for Michael Jackson.
Okay.
This one beat had ended up with Cisco. There was a section in it that sampled is it Eleanor Rigby? Dum, 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 dum. Like the staccato strings, right, on the breakdown.
Yeah.
So they spent ages, they wrote the song, they spent ages replaying it, brought it to a musicologist and wanted to get the strings so it wasn't connected to the arrangement or the structure of the Beatles song, yeah? They put it out, the song became a smash. A writer, I can't remember his name, he's a massive writer, who wrote Ricky Martin, Living the Vida Loca, yeah? They got in contact and sued them for that one line. Because I'm living the vida loca. Just for that.
That is insane.
And they ended up owning more of a percentage than anyone else on the whole song. And I was like, oh, that's a bit harsh.
Yeah.
But it just was, yeah, I was watching, it was like a VH1 documentary on it or something recently. And I was like, oh, that's pretty harsh. But it brings up the kind of conversation around all of that.
I don't know. I've seen even just like there's a rapper from Dublin, AC3, and he had his song, and like then you just get a random TikToker doing a jerk remix of it, and it's kind of like involved in that sample culture thing where it's just kids remix it, and the song's so hard, and now you're just seeing a younger generation doing this. I'm kind of like, my opinion is kind of if you're creating something yourself out of something else, it's your thing for the most part. I think you should pay credits to someone. And there should be like the legal shit about it. But I still think that it's like the way that Gilbert Sullivan was talking about sampling was kind of like that it's not an art form, that it's not a thing. But it very much is. Like
1,000,000% is. Yeah. And I feel like, you know, like you were saying, some samples have you know, brought that original piece to a whole new audience. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think people who say sampling is not an art form don't really understand the truth of it. Because it is. Obviously, sampling as an art form, there's two different sides to it. There's the bait. Yeah. Like, here's just a chop or something mad catchy and we'll just overuse
like the sample drill stuff that was happening.
And it was just like, all right, I get if that's being judged, you can be like, oh, that's easy and a cheap shot. But the real deep sampling of like, spinning something and chopping it in a certain way, or even like finding a certain part of the record and like introducing that to people. There's that famous thing. It's not sampling, but it's kind of the same conversation. The Rick Rubin and who was it? Was it Leonard Cohen or someone? It was a massive artist at the time. Had sent Rick Rubin a demo, He had 5 songs on it. Rick Rubin listened to the 5 songs and was like, yeah, there's not really much here I can work with, but there's this noodly bit you're doing on the guitar. There's magic in that. I can't remember the artist, I can't remember the song, but Rick Rubin ended up turning that into one of the artist's biggest songs.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I was like, yeah, that's, in a sense, that is a form of
that's
sampling. It's
that's
finding
sampling,
magic and going like, no, the magic's there. Don't dismiss this bit of magic. You know, so yeah, sampling.
Because even like I remember there was when I was looking for that other tweet, I seen you tweet about Eric Art Elliott's album from Flapper Zombies.
Oh yeah, come on.
And I
Eric's
remember
great.
there was a song they did Flapper Zombies called Notorious. I think it was Notorious Thugs.
Okay.
And it was Unglorious Thugs, and it was a play on Biggie's one of Biggie's songs. And they like reinterpreted it, but then it introduced me to songs I didn't know it at the time, and it's like that's the beauty of that kind of stuff.
Definitely, yeah. And I feel like, you know, that's kind of what we should be doing in music if we can. I think like, you know, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, he's a DJ, and he was like, we were kind of talking about, is the art of DJs being the teacher in raves kind of gone because we're in TikTok generation where people just want the heavy drops.
Yeah.
They'll clip it and put it online and it's just loads of heavy drops that people know. And he's like, you know, an art form within DJing has and should be kept alive. It's like, oh, I'm going to see that DJ, yeah, because of the bangers, but because they're gonna play some shit I don't even know. I guess in sampling there's an element to that, and it's something definitely that should be nurtured because it's an art form in itself.
Yeah,
you know what
absolutely.
I mean?
I'm gonna show you one more photo, like, I just want you to talk to me about it. I picked loads, but I'll go for this one.
So I'm mad fidgeting in the seat here.
It's all good.
What's this? Hey, lad, you're someone said, I'm laughing at my face here because in all these photos, someone said to me the other day, he's like, yeah, all your photos, you're mad pensive looking. Yeah, I was like, fucking, I need to lighten up. Yeah, that was in my Oasis jacket phase.
For people who are watching or listening, what's the photo?
The photo is me and Joey on Cork night. Joey Badass, and this was the first time. I think this was the first time we met. And it was the first time we met. We'd messaged each other online. I'd listened to 1999 and was blown away by it, and messaged him, found out he was a fan of my stuff, and we were just talking online for a while. I ended up jumping on My Ute remix, which was on the Summer's Night EP. Yeah. The original had Collie Buds on it, and then they did a new version. I didn't even know that it was an original. And he sent me, he was like, oh, can you write a chorus for this? Sadly, I didn't get to make it to St. Lucia for the video because I was somewhere else, which I'm still to this day pissed off about. But anyway, and we'd never met, and we the first time we met was on stage just before that photo was taken, and we met on stage doing the song.
No way.
And it was a Vans night, and nice. And yeah, that's where our kind of relationship started, and got to know him and the lads from there, and yeah, ended up making a load of more music with him. And
because Before the Money, that album as well, I remember being at university and I was so hyped off the 1999 mixtape when that came out. Then that came on, is it On and On?
On and On, yeah,
man, bangers. Well,
yeah, man, that was a good era, man. That was like what, 2014, 2015, and again talking about sounds and rebirth to sound. I remember hearing that 1999 project and being like, you know, he was 17, I was 24 or something like that at the time. So I'm like, these are the beats and these are the feels that I grew up on. Of like that early UK, Skinny Man, Kalashnikov, early Irish, Urban Intelligence, Correct Minds, 90s US, New York, boom bap stuff. I was like, oh, this is giving me that feeling, but with a new energy. And then it was like, you know, you had the whole TDE thing, you had Mac Miller, you had like a whole generation of them coming up out of the States at that time, and that was like, really doing like the rebirth authentically, and it was like, oh man, there's a lot of great artists were birthed out of that generation.
Did you get to work with anybody else from that sort of generation at any point?
Let me think.
Because that's kind of, when you're talking about those artists, those are the ones that I really got into hip hop and stuff through when I was younger. Like you're saying, TDE, ASAP Mob, Flatbush Zombies, Underachievers, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Underachievers I went to see. Yeah, I don't know if I worked with Rocky Fresh from Chicago at the time. Who else? There's probably people that I can't remember, but I got to know a lot of them personally, like the Flatbush Zombies guys and Eric I know well. Sadly, yeah, there was 2 emails that I always wanted to write. I ended up writing one recently and sending it to artists because I was always funny about that. I was like, nah, it's got to be the right thing. I can't just send people something out of the blue. And I always wanted to send Mac Miller something. I never did, yeah. And then I heard an interview with him. This was just before he passed, actually, on an Ebro in the morning. And he was like, oh, I was on the way to JFK Airport and the cabman was playing this song and it was I Need.
No way.
And he was like, yeah, Maverick Sabre, I want to check him out. And I think he started following me or something like that, but I don't know if I was in the right headspace at the time or whatever, but we never connected.
Wow.
And then he passed away and I was like, yeah. For anyone listening or for ourselves or for if you've got family or someone you want to reach out to, don't wait. Reach out right now because, there's no time like the present.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, he would have been someone that I would definitely have.
You could definitely see the music would work like
1,000,000%. Yeah. But yeah, that era was special. I remember going to V-Fest, playing V-Fest that year, and who was playing? It was A$AP Rocky, there was Schoolboy Q, Joey, who else was it? And just the lineup was crazy. It was like, we're going to watch all of these. It was all on the same day. I was like, yeah, it felt like a special era, man. Vic Mensa at the time.
Yeah, Vic Mensa.
Yeah. I've actually got this, I don't know if I've still got it on my phone, but I've got a photo of all of us. I think Sasha Keeble's in there. She was on the road with Disclosure, I think, at the time. And it was just like, it brings back good memories.
Yeah.
It was like we were all similar ages. We were all like kind of doing the festival runs for the first kind of year or two. And yeah, it was special times.
Definitely, there was a certain energy about that time. You know what I mean, man?
Mick Jenkins.
Oh man, I've that Waters album, like one of my favorite albums ever. My brother got me it for Christmas one year. So good, man.
Yeah.
Because even like Chicago, like No Name came out of there. Chance, Mick Jenkins, Vic Mensa at the same time.
Yeah. I forgot Vic is from Chicago as well. Yeah, it's a special era, and to think like that's going on in Chicago. You had whatever was going on in LA, you had whatever was going on in New York, and then you had all the pockets of everything in between. Like for that generation, it was like, wow, this is a real special era, man. It's like, one that you don't know if they come around that often.
Yeah, I know, because looking back on it now, it's crazy. The final few things I want to do, I had some people send in questions, so I got 3 questions from listeners.
These photo things are fucking hilarious. Go on.
Yeah, I did one with Saint recently. It'll be coming out soon, but it's a good one.
Yeah, okay, I like seeing it, man.
So Aaron Fahy, designer, says, if you could organise an Irish music festival, who are some of the headline acts you like and why? Let's go for 3.
Okay. I'm gonna have to put Kneecap on there. I haven't actually seen the lads. I've only watched clips.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact of I'm hearing people in England talking about the Irish language for the first time, and I'm like, oh lad, to hear a young act bringing the Irish language into a place where it feels like today culturally relevant, I think is mad interesting. I didn't know if I had believed that would ever happen, to be honest with you. Brick Nasty, because I stand firm on they are the best band in the world, and I think like you could. There's no other band that I feel like you could put either in front or behind or around any other act, and they'll do a good job. Yeah, like the audience of that band, whether it's hip hop, whether it's jazz, whether it's punk, they'd be like, yeah, all right, Brick Nasty, I fuck with Brick Nasty. Whoa, that's tough. Oh man, that's tough. I would say Officer. Yeah, I remember hearing Officer's first song, Skiddy Bop, back in the day, and I remember like, what, this is coming out of Ireland. I was like, yeah, this shit's hard. Yeah. And I feel like, on the like the vibey hip hop side of stuff in Ireland, I've always liked what he's done. A friend of mine, New Machine,
I was gonna say
they're working on some stuff. So I've literally just come from a gaff and he was playing some of their new stuff, and I was like, yeah, Officer's hard. Okay. I think that'd be an interesting lineup. Yeah. And then like honorable mentions have got to be like Khaki Kid, Abbey. I like the CMAT stuff as well. But yeah, they would be my 3 picks.
There's a lot of good shit going on at the
I
moment.
think the stuff coming out of Ireland's like I don't know if I'm forgetting an era, but it's like from, being here since '94, I was like, I feel like this is the most exciting and broad, like sonically broad, that I felt, and like even the kind of revival of the new age, trad takes of like you've got like the more traditional Mary Wallopers, but you got Lankum, and it's just mad exciting. I feel like it's exciting anyway.
Yeah. Next question comes from Smokey. What's your opinion on Skinny Man's Council of State of Mind, and have you ever owned a copy on wax?
Fucking hell, that's a good question. And from a fella called Smokey as well, I like it. I did, and I ended up getting to know Skinny Man really well because he lived near a friend of mine, and he's a lovely individual anyway. I ended up, before I ever met him, I was digging in a shop in Notting Hill. This is years ago. It's like maybe when I first moved over. And I found for like a $5 a signed version of Council State of Mind.
Wow.
That I ended up a couple of years later giving to a friend as a birthday present because he's a deep Skinny Man fan. I was like, yo, just take this. So yeah, I did own it on vinyl. It sounded as good as you would imagine on vinyl, and it was signed. Yeah.
I feel like he knew this for some reason, but
that's a deep question though.
Yeah.
That only like, who the fuck is Smokey?
He managed Courtesy for a while, and he runs gigs and stuff.
Oh, maybe
I shouldn't have said that because it made it sound even more impressive.
Well, yeah, okay, all right, okay. No, it's still impressive anyway. But
Yeah.
Would I have said that to him? That's interesting, but yeah, that's some deep knowledge there. Go on, I like it.
Then the last one came from Jack McBee. He says, you've gone on record to say Brick Nasty are the best band in the fucking world. And I'd love to know, do you think the talent level of current Irish music scene is higher or more technical than when you were coming up? Guess you've kind of answered that question a little bit.
I don't know if it's, to say it's higher or more technical, I don't know if that's the case, because there's some great records getting produced. Even someone the other day was saying about the Export from Messiah J and the Exports producing beats for, what's your man from
Mikey? He's doing stuff for Mikey
Future Island.
From Future. Oh, the lead singer dude.
It blew my mind. I was
mad.
Like, Sam Heron.
Yeah.
Now already Sam Heron on that Bad Not Good shit, I was like, who the fuck is Sam Heron? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize he was in Future Islands. And then I got played the other day this project, I can't remember the name. He goes under different alias. He's spitting and it's hard.
It's him.
And the beat,
him rapping.
It's him rapping, and the beats are by the Expert.
Yeah.
Old school Messiah J and the Expert.
Crazy.
And like back in the day, like his production was hard. And there were some great producers in Ireland. Still is. So yeah, I don't know if it's more technical. I just think there's more of it, more support, more opportunities, and the sounds are being accepted and more broad. And I think there's more of a fan base in Ireland for them sounds. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah.
I have one more quote that I found, right? If I say these words, what does this say to you?
Yeah.
Monkey Mick from Hackney Wick. That's what my mum used to call me when we came to these sticks.
Yeah.
What's that from?
That is from a mixtape. It was a mixtape that I did when I was 16, 17, something like that, I think. And it was a mixtape of Night Wonder and Pete Rock Beats, two of my favorite producers.
Yeah.
And that was what my mum used to call me as a kid, Monkey Mick from Hackney Wick. And my name's Michael. And that's the lyric.
Yeah.
That's always been one of my favorite lyrics on that as well. Yeah. That's an old school beat tape.
Because my mate Connor, he's like he should produce like deep cut shows for people. Like he was like, go definitely check that Ninth Wonder beat tape. And I went through and then I heard that song and I was like, yeah, that's a sick bar. Like,
yeah, and it was a real, like, that was a kind of like changing point for me. I feel like that mixtape, it was when I was starting to feel more comfortable in my own voice and like not trying to sound like Dizzy Rascal too much. It was like when I was growing up, some of my earlier stuff was like me finding myself, and like that tape was kind of like something was settling in me and I was kind of figuring myself out a bit more.
yeah.
And yeah, I still listen to some of them records, man. There's some of them. I think some of them are still online. Maybe the whole thing is.
When I was digging for it, like there's bits and pieces. There's an old Maverick Sabre YouTube page I found that had like some of the stuff uploaded, but it had like MediaFire file links and stuff. You know, is that even about it anymore?
Nah,
Do you know what I mean?
And that was from IrishHipHop.com forum, we used to like just post links
Yeah.
up, and you'd post the story, whatever it was called, and
Yeah.
then, like, you'd post links up. So yeah, I would just upload it to YouTube and then put the link for the download. Which again, going back, it kind of a lot of these things are connected. It's like going back to like the Sault thing through
Yeah.
WeTransfer. It's like there's something exciting about having a link and it being for free and you clicking on it and it's like an artist's music that you
Yeah.
can access it like that, rather than, I think we just get so used to the apps and DSPs and stuff that sometimes that, you know, I'm glad that there's elements of that coming back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man. Thanks so much for coming through. I
Thank
really
you very
appreciate
much
you
for having
me.
it. It's been a
Having
great
me,
interview
yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks.
it.
And is there anything you want to shout out before we go?
Nah, just like, look, a lot of the things I'm saying in these pop-ups, which is, I guess, the sentiment which we've kind of touched on already, is to make sure we nurture the community. Obviously, I'm a musician, so I'm going to speak about music and music venues, but I think it's an important time to support your local pubs and support your local independently owned music venues and support independent artists, whether that's like going to shows or buying merch or buying albums.
Yeah.
And you know, when we can, you know, keeping that community of people and talking to other people at shows and going to things with them, and like, I think there's a need and a necessity for that at the moment. And I think there's something really important. It feels like it's happening in different places, but yeah, just to make sure that we keep an eye on nurturing that, because, you know, these places need our support, these artists need our support, and we need the music. So yeah, let's not let it get out of hand and have massive corporations just dictating, you know, how much we need to spend to listen to live music and stuff like that. There needs to be a balance.
Yeah, absolutely.